Here's one of the things I've noticed when it comes to settlements and some of the data, the data that's related to settlements. There's definitely a desync in it, but the desync is interesting. I don't know if anybody else has encountered this, so I'm suspecting that this is a game level problem, a game engine problem, but I'm not sure. But I wanted to throw this out there just to kind of document it and show what's going on. Okay, so let me go to the game real quick and we'll get back to this. All right, let me bring this back up. Okay, so this is a test playthrough. This is a brand new playthrough I started using like a quick start to basically I'm in the bathroom, you know, selecting my looks and then my stats, and then out of the vault I come. It's a SKK fast start. So that's not the issue, but just kind of give you a brief little thing as to what this character is. Everything else stays the same. Pretty much the load order and everything stayed the same as the previous version. In the previous version, I had this interesting problem where when there were attacks against settlements, I would get a crash during the attack. And I noticed a lot of that, when you go into the buff out logs and you look, a lot of that was combat nav mesh pathing. So that tells me there's a broken nav mesh in there somewhere. Now, I am using Rebuild All-in-One, and I actually did 3 steps when rebuilding a settlement. So the first step was to use Raise to get rid of things like trees and junk objects. And then I used Nuke in Transfer Settlements. Then I built a settlement. I didn't build anything immediately. I ran off to do something else and then came back. And then I noticed that some of the settlement objects, when I enter into a cell and it loads whatever it needs, some of the objects clipping is not being fully loaded. The collision is not being fully loaded because you can fall through floors, you can walk through walls. And most of the time, by simply saving in that location and reloading it again, reloading that save, those objects get initialized properly. But when I'm in game, even if and then sometimes, occasionally, if I'm loading into a new game, such as Sanctuary, I would start up, some of the objects aren't getting initialized. So I'm beginning to think that has something to do with threading and the way the game is trying to minimize what it's loading. But this might also be part of the problem. And so one of the first, really what I'm doing is just, in this test, I'm just going to different settlements and acquiring the settlement. So one of the first settlements I acquired was Sanctuary. And when I acquired Sanctuary, the process was pretty much the same, except I didn't nuke the settlement. So I acquired the settlement, then I raised it, which simply just removes junk objects. There's nothing that would break a pre-combine or anything like that. It's just raising the objects out. Then I used Rebuild All-in-One. And I'm also using another person has, on the Nexus, he posted an update to Rebuild's Previs, and I'm using that. According to his post, it broke Previs in surrounding areas, so he fixed that, he said. So I'm using that as opposed to the original one that came with Rebuild. I haven't had any crashes with that. Nothing weird, nothing flickering, no problems. But but one thing about Sanctuary is, and I didn't record this then, was these numbers, the food, water, and power were all the same. So they would all show the same number. And then I went to Red Rocket, and I acquired Red Rocket. And those numbers, the food, water, and power, were all the same. The people were correct. The defense, I believe, was correct. Bed counts may or may not be correct. Of course, the happiness was okay. I imagine it's okay. I didn't really look at the variables. But in my cases, and in case I've seen before, these 3 variables are always the same. So I acquired Sanctuary by itself. I had that problem. I acquired Red Rocket. So I was trying to think, okay, maybe the problem is the way Bethesda is, or the way the scripting is set up to process each individual settlement. Maybe when you have multiple settlements in the chain, that's when the problems start. Let me do this just in case for some reason something spawns on top of me here. Just in case. All right. So, but that's what I've noticed. Now, when I go away from the settlement, sometimes it'll correct itself, sometimes it won't. And it's almost like the game is set up to run a script once a day, which makes sense. Let's, in other words, in a logical path, it makes sense. Let's give the settlement a day to, give the player at least a full 24 hours to see if they've addressed the issue. If not, let's continue to kind of degrade happiness or whatever it is we're going to do. I kind of get that idea. But one of the things I would suggest my suggestion would be when I go to a settlement, from what I understand, it's supposed to recalculate that. And I'm talking about the Pip-Boy tab, not what's actually in the workshop menu. That seems to be correct. It's the Pip-Boy tab that's not. So that to me, whatever variables are in the Pip-Boy tab should be fixed. It should be either when you go into workshop mode or once you enter a settlement, that should automatically be adjusted. But especially when you go into workshop mode, because that would be that would be kind of a workaround. I go in there, I go into workshop mode, it gets fixed. However, that was not the case. So I was actually in Red Rocket, which I'm going to show you in a second. I was in Red Rocket, and I tried all kinds of stuff to fix it. Now, one of the things I had in Workshop Framework is I had, it gives you the option to turn things on and off, and things. It's all up to the user, so it doesn't automatically turn things off if you turn something on. But it has the option to, I believe, cap settlers to charisma, and you cap settlers to bed count. Both of those were on. I figure one would override the other. It would pick the lowest of the two numbers. That's kind of like what I was thinking. I'll turn both these on, and therefore it will pick the lowest of the two numbers. So I've never looked at the script. I don't know how the conditions are applied. So I'm not sure if it does pick the lowest of the two numbers, if it picks whichever one is first and ignores the other. Like an if-else-if situation, or if it just has separate if statements. I'm not sure, but I did have both of those on. I also had turned on the option to keep the variables static in memory to try to alleviate some of the variances. So the next thing I thought I'm going to do is, okay, I'm going to try turning off, maybe the problem is bed count, because when I go to, let me hop out of this real quick. When I go to Red Rocket, when I went into Red Rocket, I noticed that this was in Red Rocket. Now, I already had people here. It's already built. It's been built for a while, and for some reason, it's now incorrect. Now, this again is the Pip-Boy tab. So if you take a look, defense looks correct. Happiness is probably correct, but look at the beds. Everything is set to what the bed is. Food, water, and power are all set to the bed count. And I'm pretty sure, that's why the numbers, because I remember, I think, let me go back and take a look here, but I think Sanctuary, when I first did it, was like 30-something. Let me see. Yeah, see where it says 38? See, Sanctuary has 38 beds. Okay, when I did Sanctuary, the food, the water, the power, and the beds were all 38. So whatever it is, it's showing the bed count. Now, I don't know if that's the persistent variables are giving everything the bed count. I'm not sure. I have all that turned off now. So I'm going to see if it crops back up with it turned off, to see if I can isolate where that is coming from. But I do know that all of it shows bed count. And that's what this is over here. This is bed count. Okay, so if you go in, you can actually see beds. So if you go to red, these are just still images. So if I go into red, this was when I was in Red Rocket. I was trying to think, okay, where is this getting this 18 from? And if you look up at the top, it shows 18. The number of beds are 18. Of course, see, the food, the water, all of that is correct. The power is correct. There's one generator in there, and it is that nuclear generator which provides 100. But in the Pip-Boy, it showed, well, let's not do that. Let's go back this way. See, in the Pip-Boy at the time, it showed 18. Now, I was using persistent variables. So I'm wondering if, for some reason, there's something that's causing, because even at Sanctuary, I had persistent variables set on. I wonder if there's a bug in there somewhere that it's taking the bed count. For some reason, it's getting the variables, or it could be at engine level, I'm not sure, but it's getting the bed count, and then it's applying the bed count to everything else, which it shouldn't do. Those are completely individual variables. So I'm not sure, but it's only in the Pip-Boy. It's not when you visit the settlement. Once you go into the workshop, that's fine. That's the Pip-Boy that's reporting the invalid values. Now, in this instance over here, this is back into the game, back in Red Rocket. Last night when I quit, of course, I actually turned off, let's take a look at that. Let me do that real quick. All right, so let's go into configuration menu. Okay, and if we go in and take a look at workshop framework, let's go this way. Okay, so I've got charisma turned on, and I've got bed count turned off, because I thought, okay, maybe this is the cause of the problem. Maybe for some reason it's getting a bed count value, but it's not retrieving the other values. It could be in a conditional. It could be a situation where a number is retrieved, but you have a loop going on, and for some reason it's not recognizing that it's using a number for something else. So I left it on charisma for now. And then I've got this turned off. Also, I make sure I don't want to be making a mistake here and fibbing. But okay, so I turned off persist workshop resource objects. Okay, so I turned that off for the moment. Now it didn't really correct itself. I thought, okay, I'm going to do this, and then I realized this probably is a cycle. It's probably like a daily cycle this thing goes through. It's like a once-a-day routine. It fires off this maintenance script. Okay, but like I say, with the Pip-Boy, I would make it so that once you're in workshop mode, because part of workshop framework, I think, knows you're in workshop mode. There's a test, and I know Workshop Plus knows it, that it automatically takes the values from that. If the variables are known, I would automatically update those static values if it's possible, and that way it's a kind of a workaround fix. I can go there, I can do this, plug it, and it's got the right numbers. But this is what I'm trying now. Now, if you notice, the numbers now look okay for Red Rocket. That looks like what it should. Bed counts. See, the bed counts are now 18. The food now has its own. The water has its own, and power has its own. The only difference with this is when I stopped playing yesterday, I was in the game playing at the time. And this is when I was actually playing the game at the time. So I exited the game, which means the next time I have to start the game up, it's going to start fresh. It's going to reload everything fresh. And then I check it. As soon as I load into the game and check it, everything has its own numbers. So for some reason, when the game is, to me, something is happening where it's giving every variable the bed count. And it is the bed count. But it's the bed count at the time that some script is run or something is done. Because in one instance, I think it was, I want to say Sunshine Tidings, when I just went there to acquire that workshop, and clear that, acquire it, clean everything out. I believe there were only 4 beds left. And then I added those, I stored those in the workshop. And that's, I think, where it got the 4 beds. But even though I stored them in the workshop was correct. So in workshop mode, it showed 0 beds. But when you go into the Pip-Boy, it shows 4. So it's probably whenever that script was run, and I'm assuming it's going to be persistent and then updated at the update time. However, what I would do, if it's possible, going into workshop mode and exiting workshop mode, I would call that update function. So, even if you enter a settlement, if it's possible to call that update function, once everything is loaded. So therefore, it's a lot of redundancy, but it's kind of like a catch-all. Now, what I guess what you could do, and this is just a suggestion, if you do the redundancy check going into a settlement, once that settlement is loaded, that cell is loaded, and it is a settlement cell, workshop, actual workshop itself is present to update those variables. Going into workshop mode, update it, and then once you leave workshop mode, update it again. And then that way those variables are set during those processes, not just once a day. And it might have been set up that way, I'm not sure. I've never looked at the script. I'm just kind of looking at it externally. But that's what I wanted to show you, that for some reason it's giving the bed count. Now, in this case, it did correct itself. See, it did actually, but this is loading a new game. So what I'm referring to is not the fact that, loading, exiting the game and loading it seems to work. The problems are occurring with the data that is in the game as the game is being played. So cells are not either fully initializing or data isn't fully loading. Something is causing that problem. Now, just as an initial ballpark guess, it's making me think that code is being skipped, that there's some condition that exists that's causing code segments, whether it's in the executable or scripting code segments, is being skipped. So whether you've got an event, a papyrus event that is when you register for an event, because that would make, from an event point of view, from a programming point of view, it makes sense to create in an engine loop. You create events, but you don't want to send events to every single program. What you do is you register. You can have a program saying, I'm interested in this event. So then it has a very small table it goes through to make sure that in that event queue, if you have an event queue processor, in that event queue, that event is stored. Therefore, when that event queue processor runs, it could then execute a script that is associated or linked into that event. And that way you generate the event once. It's a tight loop. You generate it once, goes to the event processor, which then parcels it out. It parcels it out to everybody who's registered for it. To me, that would make the most sense in design. So I don't know if something is being skipped in that event processing where events aren't firing. If it's under a heavy load. And I know that term is used a lot, but I have no evidence to say that's the case. I do notice that sometimes the game looks better when it runs like it should. And it runs better. When it's running better, it looks better. So to me, that leads me to believe that in the game engine there is optimizations that try to reduce quality and reduce things that are being done. It's implicit. It's within the code itself, the game engine itself. Or something is causing a problem which is causing it to desync. There's a lot of threads running, and somehow those threads are getting out of sync, and graphics and certain things are not being updated, so the game doesn't look as good. Now, I have noticed that. It's a slight difference. And I attributed that to maybe performance optimizations, where the game says, okay, you really don't necessarily need this because I'm trying to keep it up to this, like frame rates up to this. That's just a guess. That would be an initial guess. And make sure something's not floating around here, but that would be an initial guess as to what I'm thinking. Just wanted to show you guys that, and show you that's one of the things that I'm trying to figure out, or I'm trying to get enough data on to see if there's anything, if there's any type of coincidences that could possibly isolate sections of engine code or something else that might be causing the problem. So I hope that helps in some way. And I'll keep looking at it. I'm just kind of testing out this load order, and I'll keep looking at it and see if I can get you guys some more information that might help. Hey, yeah, thanks for all the hard work you guys do. Appreciate it. Like everybody else, I love some of the work you guys do, and that's with the whole modding community. That's just not with any particular mod. It's with everybody, from the smallest to the greatest. I think everything kind of adds up to a whole. And just wanted, I never really actually took time to say that, but anybody, I think anyone who contributes to the future of someone else, I think that is a very, very honorable thing, and I think that's a really good thing to do. Okay, so that being said, I'm going to get back into testing, make some more coffee, that kind of good stuff, and see what I can come up with. All right, so good luck. Nice job, guys, and I hope this helps with some of some of those problems everybody seems to be having. All right, so have fun gaming, and good luck.